Hi, everybody. We'll get started in just a few seconds. I'm just trying to get everything kind of set up so you can see where we are and what is to come. Give me just a few seconds. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat room. So I have the screen up. Can you guys see it? Just want to make sure before I get started. Oh, perfect. Okay, I see someone said that they can't access skill 3. Let me look at that real quick. If I hit edit modules. Oh, here's why you can't see it. It's not published in that module. Okay, so I just made that live. Thank you for letting me know. Let me see if the other class has that same problem as well, just so I can open it up. And then we'll get started. So, oh, so it's open. Okay, perfect. So skill 3 is now open. And that is the only thing that's due this week other than this week's lecture. The way that you go to the assignments tab, if you go and look at those, you'll see that you have some upcoming assignments that you can be working on. Everything has been graded except for the movie test number 2. But you have skill 3 that's due this week. It's due by Sunday night. The list of skills are there. Some of you have been doing the skill assignment and not actually performing the skill. And to get full credit on this assignment, you have to actually do the skill. So you've got to pick one that you want to, practice. You talk about your past behaviors. You talk about the one that you tried to do and what happened, and then kind of what you learned from that experience. And that should be, a full page that you're turning in through Canvas. It's not just a processing of, what it means to be silent or, what conflict is. I'm looking for you to do an actual action step around the skills. And that's due by Sunday night. The other thing that is due coming up is your relational interview. And I did put some sample questions in the relational interview, as well as the video that I had shown you a clip of in class, and then some sample papers. Obviously, you can't just copy and paste these questions. You can use some of them, but you have to come up with your own. And that paper has to be with 4 people, 2 couples. And you can either do 2 separate papers where you just write 2 pages on one couple and 2 pages on the other couple, or you could compare and contrast the 2 couples. But it can't just be a regurgitation of the interview. So you can't just a transcript of, I asked this, they said this, I asked this, they said this. It has to be an analysis or an essay paper, 4 pages of kind of what came out of your interviews. So for example, if you interviewed my wife and I, you might say how we met, you might talk about how long we've been together. Is there anything other than, just being 2 women in a relationship, a lesbian couple that might be unique? And there is an age difference. So there's a 12-year age difference between my wife and I. She is 60 and I am 48. And so you might, talk about the age difference. You might talk about a lesbian same-sex relationship. You might talk about being geographically different. So I grew up in the South. She grew up on the West Coast. There's just different ways that we communicate with family, with friends, in life in general. And so all of those things could be analyzed and looked at, but you could also ask intimate questions about the relationship. So how do we solve conflict? What are things that we negotiate in the relationship? Have we ever had infidelity? What do we feel makes a successful relationship? So all of those things, I could ask that couple and then move those same types of questions to the second couple, or I could come up with other questions that are more relatable to whoever the other couple is that I'm interviewing. But however you do it is totally up to you. That's just something that you want to start thinking about. The other assignment that is live, this assignment, the relational interview is due on December the 5th. So you have 2 weeks from this Sunday night. So you definitely should be working on it over the Thanksgiving break, because you don't want to have the week that you come back rushing to try to get it done. And if you haven't identified your 2 couples, you definitely want to make sure that you're doing that as quickly as possible. Your movie paper, you can turn in anytime between now and December the 15th. If you wanted to do it on the first movie, if you wanted to do it on the second movie, if you wanted to do it on the third movie, you just have to wait and watch that one, or you could do it on 1, 2, or all 3 of them. But that paper is due by the 15th. You can turn it in anytime now between now and the end of the semester. But that's another paper that you could get out of the way. Any questions about any of that before we get started on our next part of today's lecture? Nope. Okay, no, that means no questions, right? Okay, cool. I think, Alan, that means no questions. So we're going to start today talking about communication climates and relationships. And kind of what we're talking about today will give you some guiding points for your relational interview. So I highly recommend that if you don't take any notes during this presentation, that you definitely on Monday, when I share the video, you make sure that you're looking over the PowerPoint and you're watching the video. I'm going to share everything on Monday that I talk about today. And that'll give you some guiding points for your relational interview. You can just, watch today and kind of listen and ask questions if you want. Maybe even write question ideas that you come up with for your couple. If you don't want to take notes, just say, oh, well, that'd be a good question, etc. Because this really relates to things that you could look at in a long-term relationship. So I'm going to start by talking about the slide that's on the screen right now, and it talks about the elements to a satisfying personal relationship. And in your book or in the course materials that we're using, there are tips for making the relationship stronger and more healthy. And they give out 4 different ways that you can kind of ask couples about what makes a relationship work. And in relational studies, the 4 elements that people will claim are positive or healthy things in their relationship come from these 4 elements. And so, for example, if I was to ask a long-term couple, how do you know that you're in a good relationship? One person might offer investment, and they may not say it as the word investment. They may say how much time we spend together. Now, how that gets determined is different from person to person. So, for example, if we look at Pearl and Marty, I'm just going to give, just a quick question to the group. Where do you feel like Marty gave his time? Just to have you type it in the movie that we just watched. What would you say he would claim was his investment in the relationship? And either you can say it out loud or you can type it in the chat room. His job, exactly. Good job, Luke. So if you were to ask Marty in your interview, relational interview, how do you give back to this relationship? He might say, well, I go to work, I provide for the family, I make sure that they have a roof over their heads, food on the table, and I leave them during the week, but it's because I'm trying to provide for them. Now, if you were to ask Pearl what her investment is, she might say, I take care of the kids, I make sure the house is running smoothly. And then if you were to ask them, well, are you happy with those investments? Are you happy with, the time and the investment that you're putting into the relationship? I bet that if you would have gotten Marty separate and you would have gotten Pearl separate, they would have said, no, I'm not happy. I feel like all I do is go to work. I don't get any quality time with my family. She would say, I feel like all I do is take care of the kids. I don't have any quality time with my partner. I want something new and interesting in the relationship. She kept articulating that she wanted that. And so the investment has to be looked at as, I'm giving this because I love the relationship and I'm not expecting anything back, but I want to give to this relationship. And there was a fight that Marty and Pearl were in, and Marty said, I didn't need anything else. I felt like I got the number one thing right, which was you and this family. And yeah, I got to go to work every day, but that's just what you have to do, to have a life. And for her, she wanted more than that. And it's not blaming her for wanting more than that. It's blaming her for not articulating it in the right way and forcing him to listen, because she was trying to say that she was unhappy and she wanted more investment and time in the relationship, even so much to say, hey, Marty, take me out on a date. I'd love it if you take me to this concert. And while she was saying that, he's like, listen to the silence. I love it that we're just sitting here and we're not, having to do anything. There's no bubby, there's no kids. And she's like, I want excitement. I want to go to this concert. And he just totally misses all of that. So investment is very, very important. And it's important for us to think about, am I giving, and is the other person happy with what I'm giving? So sometimes you could say, well, I'm paying the bills and I'm putting a roof over your head. But if you're not intimately involved in the relationship and thinking about closeness, that may not be enough. And so thinking about how I can give more to the relationship is very important. The second investment is commitment. So thinking about or the second element of a satisfying relationship is commitment. So Marty would say he was committed to the relationship because he was going to work. Pearl would say she was committed to the relationship because she was taking care of the kids. But in reality, she was not as committed as Marty was. I truly believe that Marty showed really strong commitment, even towards the end when he stayed in the relationship and said, what are you doing? You're walking out on your family. And she tries to come back at the end of the movie, and he is committed enough to go back to a wife that's cheated on him, change the song on the stereo and say, I'm going to try to be different. I'm going to try to do this from your perspective and what you're wanting. And we don't know if it's going to work, but he's saying, I'll do whatever it takes to save this family. I'll do whatever it takes to make this relationship work. Whether or not they're going to get in a fight, right after that, when they go back to the bedroom and he's like, you slept with a blouseman and I just can't do this. Or 3 months from now when they're in an argument and he's like, you slept with a blouseman, and they're in an argument. We don't know what's going to happen. We got a Hollywood ending. But what we do know is that he was truly committed and he was making a personal choice to be committed. That element of a satisfying personal relationship with that coupleship is probably going to be strained moving forward, because he also is going to have some trust issues that are going to be lacking because of Pearl's lack of commitment to the relationship. And so, yes, she might have been committed to the family. Yes, she might have been doing all the things that a wife and mother, should be doing to take care of the family. But the one thing that fell short was being true to her commitment to her husband and, the infidelity that took place. And she may not trust herself moving forward. So she may get into the relationship and say, I don't know if I truly trust that Marty can be the guy that I want. I'm still pining over the blouse man. And I don't trust that I'm not going to leave this relationship, in the future. And so we don't know what's going to happen, but we do know that they need to work those elements out if the relationship's going to be a satisfying one moving forward. And then the final element to a satisfying personal relationship is relational dialectics. And relational dialectics are the tensions that play out in a relationship. So the forces that begin to play and make us either fight or get along or find connection. All of that is connected to relational dialectics. And so I want to define what relational dialectics is first. And at the very beginning of the semester, I showed you the syllabus, and it had the penguin and the polar bear dancing together. And they were doing the same dance moves in their choreographed dance, but they're totally different people. And that's how I look at relationships. So when I come into a relationship, I'm never going to meet someone who's exactly like me, my same moods, my same feelings, my same life experience. And what I'm trying to do is to figure out how to manage through this relationship in a way that's not stepping on their toes, that's not making them be me, and vice versa. So I'm really just trying to complement that other person. And that's what relational dialectics are. It's those tensions that are playing through in the relationship. And generally, we are attracted to what? What are we attracted to? What's the old adage? The opposite. Exactly. So if we're attracted to the opposite, then that means that we have our tension and our dialectical difference, and we probably are attracted to someone who is different than that. And what that means is that in the areas that we might be different, we may have someone that's nothing like us. And so obviously that's going to be something that gives us some kind of friction or tension in the relationship. So these three relational dialectics that we're going to go over are very important to understand. They're generally some of the elements that either make us break up or stay together. This very first one that we're going to discuss is deemed to be one of the most number one reasons why early relationships break up, and that is connectedness versus autonomy, or interdependence versus independence. And so I'm going to describe the two, but what I want you to do is also try to think about for yourself, where do you find yourself in this relational dialectic? So for example, the relational dialectic of connectedness is a person that needs to find connection in another person. So for example, when they get off work, they want to be with the other person. They're immediately calling to check in. They've probably checked in through text and phone calls throughout the day. They're looking for that connection. When they get to the home, they're trying to be in the same space of that other person. They're trying to make dinner and be connected. The element of connection is just physical, but also emotional connection. The opposite of that is independence, which is autonomy. And so that person, kind of goes about their day doing their own thing. Yes, they know they're connected to another person, but their focus is not that connection. It's more just internal autonomy or independence. So, they may come home and they have like an office or a man or woman cave where they go and they just kind of, do their thing, their hobby, their interest, read a book. They don't have to be in the immediate space of that other person. And if you remember early on in the semester, I talked about my brother and his girlfriend early on in a relationship he was in where she wanted to talk on the phone all night. And he was like, I just want to get off the phone and play Call of Duty 50. I've, talked to you. I've told you I'm off work. I had a good day. What else do I need to say? She's looking for connection. He's looking for independence. And again, that's one of the number one reasons we break up, because we don't know how to manage that. And so one person feels smothered, the other person feels like they're not connected and they feel unloved or unappreciated or not connected. And that makes them think, why am I even in this relationship? Which is why David and that Jamie broke up. Because Jamie was like, if you wanted to be with me, then you'd want to spend all this time with me. But the problem with that is, imagine two connected people together. What would happen if two people both shared connectedness or interdependence? And that's who I was attracted to, or that's who I ended up in a relationship. What would be the conflict or the problem? Anybody saying it? I'm waiting.
You might struggle with your other relationships, maybe.
Well, you might struggle with making, more better connected relationships in your friend group. So for example, that's a good answer, Emma, because, I've been friends with people that they get in a relationship and I just totally lose connection to them because they're now smothered and into this new relationship. And that's all they do. They don't know how to manage a intimate relationship and a friendship. They just kind of go all into the other one. So that's one. But the other thing is, if I'm in a relationship with someone who's connected and I'm a connected, I like that connection, I may have the issue of both of us feeling smothered in the end. So for example, when I was younger, I had this best friend that was totally into connection. And if you were to think about the kind of person that I probably seem like I am that interdependence. I like connection. You're in one room, I want to be in the one room. And so my best friend and I, by the end of the weekend, we were ready to kill each other because we had spent too much time together. And so I learned that hanging out with people and being, close to people that were connected people, I tended to not have a strong relationship with, because I would get in fights with those people because we'd spend too much time together. So then I started to notice that I found attraction and I connected with people more that were more independent and needed that autonomy. And so, for example, the person that I married someone who's autonomous. And that means that when I'm looking for connection, she generally wants to go in the studio. She wants to, work on something at work or whatever. And then what happens when I want autonomy? What do you think happens? I'll tell you what happened. She wants connection. So it's just like a cat. If you are trying to go touch a cat and be in its space, it'll run off a lot of times. It'll take off, don't touch me. But the moment you go sit down, you want to read a book or a newspaper, or you're trying to be on your computer, they'll just come right be in the middle of everything. And so that push and pull is based on the fact of that connectedness versus autonomy, versus autonomy. And so I have to remind myself that I need space to be autonomous. And I also like connection. So I've got to work with my partner to also meet me in the middle and be connected. But I also have to give her space and let her be autonomous. If I don't, then we're going to be fighting over the fact that she feels smothered or I feel left out. And a great example is when I was in an early relationship, before I really understood those relational dialectics, I went to this conference with a person I was dating, and we had been to this conference for like 5 days. And then we get off the airplane, we're in baggage claim. And I say, were you going to go to my house or am I going to go to your house? And she's like, I'm going to go to my house and I'm going to feed my dog and cut the grass and check my mail and, make sure everything's good at my house. And you're going to go to your apartment and see your brother and take care of your cat and, check on everything. And we'll connect later today. And I'm like, well, did I do something wrong? And I'm like totally feeling insecure. And I got my own issues of, wanting that connectedness, and I'm starting to smother that person. And I'm like, well, whatever. And I get my little bag and I go out through the, airport baggage claim, go into my car. And I'm like, well, fine. I'm not going to call that person. 30 minutes later, I'm at the house. I've fed my cat. I've cleaned the litter box. I've checked in on my brother. And I'm like, well, I wonder if she's going to call. Well, I'm just going to call her. And so I'm already smothering and connected again. Now, did I need more autonomy? Did I need some downtime at my house after I'd been with my girlfriend for 5 days? In Salt Lake City? Yes, I needed to be in Fresno, taking care of my apartment, catching up on the work or the mail or whatever else that I needed to do. But I had to be forced to do that because that wasn't like me. And so a good relationship is going to have that push and pull and make that tension work in the relationship. And so I'm going to be attracted to someone who gives me that autonomy, but also takes in my connection and wants connection too, because they like that. And again, as I said before, when I'm looking for connection, my wife generally is looking for autonomy. When I'm looking for autonomy, my wife is like, oh, well, why don't you want to be connected? Let's be connected. And so we've got to do that dance and try to figure out how to not step on each other's toes and not fight too much about the fact that we are sometimes not meshing as well because of those tensions. The second one. So for example, on the one that we just talked about, I'd love for you to think about, and you're going to have to answer this question on your essay in the final, which one do you think you are more, independent or interdependent? And obviously you are different with different people. So for example, predictability versus novelty. Predictability would be a person who's very planned out, has a calendar, follows, kind of what's the plan for the day, what's the plan for the week, what's the plan for the month. Novel is more spontaneity, flies by the seat of their pants, tries to figure out on their own what they're going to do, how they're going to respond, really just likes to take, life in the moment. And in reality, if I'm looking at it from the perspective of predictability versus novelty, what I know about myself is I love novel spontaneity, but I also crave more predictability. And so I don't like to be in a situation where someone's coming up and saying, you know, hey, this weekend, and I'll give you an example. My brother and I were living together, and I get home from work and he says, you know, hey, let's go to San Francisco this weekend. And I was like, I can't go to San Francisco. You know, I've got to go out to dinner with friends on Friday night. Saturday, I'm going to the Fresno State game. Sunday, I'm going to church. And then Sunday afternoon, I got to do some grading. And my brother's like, that's the schedule that you can't, you know, miss to go to San Francisco. And I'm like, David, I just can't, you know, fly by the seat of my pants. I have a schedule. That's what's in the calendar. And so we don't go. And then about a month later, my brother comes up and he's like, hey, where's your calendar? And I said, oh, you know, it's in my backpack in the living room. He goes, oh, okay. And then he walks off. He gets my calendar. He comes up and he goes, oh my God, Robin, look, it says you're going to San Francisco this weekend. And I laugh, I think it's funny. And I'm like, okay, you know, that's cute. And I'm like, okay. And I probably had the same kind of schedule that I'd had before: dinner, go out with friends, Fresno State game, go to church and whatever. But I was like, I'm going to fly by the seat of my pants and I'm going to go with you to San Francisco. And we had a great time. We went to Fisherman's Wharf, Union Square, rode the trolley. And as we're driving back, we're in Los Banos and David goes, you know, hey, pretty fun to fly by the seat of your pants. And I said, oh, you know, are you talking about the fact that, you know, I just left everything and, you know, went to San Francisco with you? And he said, yeah. He goes, you know, you kind of went by the spur of the moment. And what he's trying to say is I'm predictable and boring, and he's novel and spontaneous. And in that moment, I looked at him and I said, David, I said, do you realize that if it wasn't for my predictability, you wouldn't know your girlfriend's birthday, you wouldn't know when your anniversary is, you wouldn't know when your financial aid check is coming in or when you're supposed to register for classes? And he goes, okay, you got a point. So in reality, we are dancing and he gets benefits for my predictability. I get benefits from his novelty, and he gets benefits from my predictability. Now, if I'm in a coupleship where we're both novel and spontaneous, then we may find that, you know, we can't get anything done. The bills aren't getting paid. The house isn't getting clean. We're always flying by the seat of our pants. And that's going to lead to stress in the relationship. So I need to be with someone who's predictable and kind of slows me down, because I do like spontaneity. And so what I did find in my relationships when I started looking for a partner is I want someone who's even more predictable than I am. So when I do have spontaneity, I know when it is. And so, like, for example, I might say this weekend, oh, honey, you know, I'm gonna take you to Carmel this weekend. Let's get away. And she's thinking, oh my God, that's so spontaneous. I can't believe we're just gonna take this weekend trip away. I had no idea. That's so cool that you planned this. Now, she doesn't know that it's been on the calendar for a month and I've already planned everything out and all the details are done, because I look spontaneous and unpredictable. And so those tensions work well because she just kind of does the same thing all the time. She works in her studio, she works at a construction place, she comes home, watches TV, and I get to plan the fun things. And that is kind of how the dynamics work. But if we both were planning the fun things, we'd be fighting about, well, what do we do? I want to do this and you want to do this. So it's good to have that dance of those different things in the relationship. And we are different people with different we are different ways with different people. So with my wife, if you were to ask her, are you more predictable or are you more novel? She would say, I'm more novel. If you were to ask my brother, he'd say, oh my God, my sister's so predictable, because we have different roles with different people. And then the last one is privacy versus open. And so privacy is a person that keeps things to the chest. They don't really talk a lot about what's going on. If there's conflict, they don't want to over process it. If it is in the element of surprise, of let's say we're going to Three Rivers to go to a Christmas party or a holiday party. And as we're driving there, you look over and you say, you know, man, I don't know why they couldn't have done this down in the valley like Hanford or, you know, Visalia, Tulare, heck, you know, why we got to drive all the way to Three Rivers? Gas is almost $5 a gallon. And I look at you and I say, you know, well, it's going to be fun. Let's get away out of the fog, you know, we get to see the river and a cute, cool little town. You know, it's fun to, you know, take a little trip. And you're looking at me like, okay, whatever, you know, spontaneity, you're wanting to be more predictable. And now we get to the party, knock on the door, the host comes to the door and they go, oh, you know, how was your drive? If I'm the more open person, which I tend to be, I bet if I asked you, you would probably say, you could predict kind of where I am. If I'm the more open person, I would say, you know, oh, well, you know, I was riding with Emma and Luke and Ben and Jaslyn and Alan, and they were all talking about how the gas prices are high and they don't know why we had to come up here. We don't know why you couldn't have done the party down at a restaurant in town. And you guys are looking at me like, are you freaking kidding me right now? Why did you need to tell that person that? Now, the reason that I'm self-disclosing, anybody want to guess which one of these tensions? Why am I self-disclosing? It's not just because I'm open. Why would I be self-disclosing? Come on. Somebody say it. Take a guess. Novelty? No, no. It's the other one. Because spontaneity and novelty is not going to lead to why I would self-disclose to that person that you've complained about the gas prices. The reason that I'm doing that is because I'm trying to build connection on your back. So if I'm telling the host, you know, oh, you know, Luke talked about the gas prices all the way up here, you're going to be like, why did you need to tell them that? And I'm telling them not thinking, oh, I'm going to throw Luke under the bus, but I just did because I'm trying to build connection with the host that's invited us to this event. And if you're not saying those things, it doesn't mean that you don't want connection. It's just you're more private. You like more autonomy. You're not feeling like you need to process everything. So for example, we may go through a breakup. I post Taylor Swift lyrics everywhere and talk about how unhappy I am and, you know, why you're so terrible and why I'm so sad. And no one knows from your end that the relationship's over. You know, you don't need to go out and process everywhere and tell everybody everything because you're more private and I'm more open. And so all of those things create those different tensions in relationships and can lead to fights and arguments. So one of the things that you could do with your relational couples is try to figure out which one you feel like is more autonomous, which one you feel like is more connected, which one is more private, which one is more open, which one is more predictable, which one is more spontaneous. And you might even ask them and see if their answers are correct whenever you're interviewing them. The other thing that we're going to talk about is the model of relational development and maintenance. And so there was a guy by the name of Mark Knapp. You don't have to know his name, but he came up with 5 stages of coming together and 5 stages of coming apart. And what he said is that these 5 stages all don't always start at the beginning. So you don't always start at step 1. Sometimes you start at step 3, but you generally go in a sequential order, but not always. So you could start at step 3 and then jump to coming apart if the relationship doesn't work out. So for example, we saw that in the movie with the blouse man. You know, she didn't even know his name and she's making out with him on the bus watching the moon landing. And they're already in step 3 where they're, you know, sucking face. And she's like, you know, what is your name? And in reality, she skipped steps 1 and 2, which would have given her that information. And after step 3 in step 4, she moved completely to coming apart because she had to break up with the guy because she was married and shouldn't have been in the relationship in the first place. So we don't always go in order, but generally we do. So you might ask, or you might look at your couples and say, well, these are the stages of coming together and coming apart. Where do you feel like you are? What you will find, though, is they're not always in the same stages. So for example, there was a part where Pearl was in coming apart in her relationship with Marty, even though she was a coming together with the blouse man. And Marty, if you would have asked him before he knew about the affair, thought everything was fine. He had no idea that his wife was that unhappy, or he was not paying attention to the signs that she was that unhappy. And he would have said that they were in the coming together stages, not the coming apart, because he's really not paying attention to the signs. She hasn't self-disclosed that she's unhappy and she's leaving, but they are definitely in 2 different sections of the model. So one of the things that you could do is to look at the relational dialectics, or you could look at the models of relational development and maintenance and try to see where your partners fit into this. Oh my goodness. So where did I stop? Thank you, Luke. I hit the button. Where did I stop? This slide. Okay, perfect. So the 5 stages of coming together and 5 stages of coming apart might be something that you look at with the relational couples that you interview. And some of them may be just meeting each other. So let's say they met on a blind date or they just started dating. They may be in that initiation where, it's just briefly, fairly scripted. Hey, how are you? My name's Robin. My name's so-and-so. Well, what kind of things do you like? Where do you go to school? What's your major? What town you live in? All of that stuff is the initiating. Now, some people will meet someone in that first moment and they're like, not interested, kind of weirdo, I'm moving along. If you think about the first days that you're in a classroom, you sit there, hey, what's your name? What's your name? You may sit by that person the next time you come to class. The moment that you begin to move further in that looking for that student, doesn't mean it's romantic, but now age, which is experimenting. And so experimenting would be where you start asking more personal questions. So you're kind of auditioning that other person, trying to see if you kind of like them. Doesn't even have to be romantic. But let's say that I am set up on a blind date. We go out to dinner. By the time we've walked to the car and we're having dinner, I'm already to the second stage of experimenting. So I'm asking questions. I'm reducing my uncertainty about that other person. I'm deciding if I want to know them even more. And if things are going well, then I'm going to continue experimenting. I'm going to ask questions about, how many kids do you want? And, what's your goals for relationship? And, et cetera, depending on how long we've been dating and how long this experimenting is going on. And some people spend an experimenting time that goes a long way. It is not just this brief instigation of we meet each other and we're automatically, intensifying and bonding. Some people meet each other. They may meet at the club on Friday night, suck face, before they even really know that much about each other. The next day they hang out, and by Sunday they're driving to Vegas. There are really relationships that, they get married in 55 hours and then, they're together forever. Some people get married in 55 hours like Britney Spears and they're divorced, very soon after that. So in reality, we have to watch what those cues are and what we know about ourselves. So some people move really fast, some people move at a slower pace. And so I have to make sure that I'm not moving faster than the other person. So for example, with the relationship with Pearl and Marty, or not Pearl and Pearl and the blouse man, when she came to tell him that it was over, whenever the grandma had kind of confronted her and he said, I understand you've got kids, her look was like, I can't believe you're saying that. I thought you'd say, no, we'll make it work, whatever. And she just kind of looks deflected and sad. And what she's realizing at that moment is that she was probably moving faster in the relationship than he was. He was still experimenting. He was still trying to figure out what's going on. And for her, she was in a stage of, man, maybe this could work. I'll leave my husband. I'm going to be with the blouse man, whatever. And that's because they had moved to flirting and affection or whatever. And another example might be, let's say I'm dating someone, we've been going out for a while, and I say, I really am enjoying spending time with you. I think I've fallen in love with you, and I hope you feel the same way. And they say, yeah, I really like you. I'm really enjoying spending time with you too. Immediately, I'm learning, oh, wow, I'm moving faster than this other person. And so I might move back to experimenting because I'm realizing, oh, wow, I've intensified and I'm moving further into this relationship faster than the speed of the person that I'm actually dating. So we have to kind of see where partners are as we're moving along. And sometimes we're really committed and we're in that we conversation of, we're moving at this stage together. And sometimes we're moving faster than the other person. We're so much into the sparkle, we don't realize how far ahead we've gone in this coming together. The other part is integrating. So this might be the stage where we start talking about moving in together. We may say that we're exclusive. We're not dating anyone else. And we do this even with friends, you're my best friend. And so kind of laying claim to them and hoping that, if they're going to go to sushi and they know I love sushi, they're going to call me. And so that integrating is creating kind of that mutually shared moments towards more of a significant stance in the relationship. And sometimes other people push us towards that. So for example, Thanksgiving is coming up, and I'm sure some of you may have been dating someone or going out with someone. And sometimes family will be like, well, hey, you're going to bring so-and-so to Thanksgiving, and you're not even at that stage yet. But there are other people that are moving you towards that because they want that or because they're interested in knowing where you are. So we can be pushed into that integrating even faster than we want to integrate ourselves. Our friends can do it to us. Our family members can do it to us, and that can push us further along. And then the next stage of coming together is the bonding stage. And the bonding stage is generally, in our country would be marriage, but it could be that we have, started to introduce ourselves as a couple, like we're beginning to tell everyone, we show up together everywhere. But generally in a romantic relationship in the United States, bonding is the display of a social event that, kind of gets that social support where everybody comes and supports the relationship. The one thing I want you to understand about this stage, and this is the most frightening thing to me about this model, is that bonding is so closely connected to coming apart. And so the scary part is the moment that we get into bonding, our next stage is beginning to unravel the relationship. And so you would think that bonding would generate this, intensifying or this, I want to be with you or whatever. And sometimes it does, but that means that we're backing up in stages. So we could get married and be in the honeymoon stage, and now we're back in intensifying again and everything's great. But now we've got to figure out how to live together. Now we're fighting over, whatever might be the intrinsic behaviors of the relationship. And so I'll give you an example. At the very beginning of the semester, I talked about Sally and Timmy, the couple that met in my classroom, and how he asked her to go out on a date. They went out on a date, and we talked about the transactional model and, how he found out that she had an ex-boyfriend named Johnny. That was an actual couple that was in my class decades ago when I first started teaching. And they actually did stay together. So they went to Fresno State together. While they were at Fresno State, they debated whether they should live together. And one of the advices that I gave them was that there are relational studies that show that living together before marriage, not a religious or political belief, but a sociological belief, is that it can take away from the newness of bonding. And then when you do get married, if you've lived together, there is this element of feeling like, is this it? And so if you're going to live together before you're married, it's very smart to be conscious of saving some of those relational first for when you get married. So for example, it may not be acting in all ways, like putting up our first Christmas tree and all this other things, maybe saving those things so you can have that element of first and newness after you're bonded in marriage. And all those things that you negotiate when you begin to live together, now they've already been negotiated. You get married, you go home, it's like, oh, it's just like what it was before. So it's being mindful of that. And so that was part of the advice that I gave them. And so they didn't live together. She went into the dorms. He joined a fraternity. They still dated all through their high school or not, their college experience. And then after they graduated, they decided they were going to get married. And his decision was more based on the fact that financially it was the smart move. He was like, why would we continue to live separately? We've been together for almost 4 years. Why don't we just take the next step, get married? I don't want to have kids yet, but I do, see it smarter than us renting separate apartments or going in different directions. And so they actually got married. And 3 months after they were married, they had created this beautiful life together. And this is kind of where the story begins to get embellished, but I'm going to give you an example of kind of what happens in the relationship. And so I know, and I hope that you have this similar experience. I know relationships where there are couples that will show signs of being very excited about the fact that they're bonded. So for example, a marriage house is what I call it, where I go to a house and, they have on the coffee table is a wedding book with all their photographs. On the mantle over the fireplace is a monogram of their last name's initial. Maybe they even have the bird seed sitting on the mantle that people threw out at their wedding. But it's like, they have a wedding story pillow that's on their couch or wherever. And that's what Sally and Timmy's house looked like. Sally was so excited to be bonded, so excited to be integrated, very much in the intensifying and back in the celebrating of bondage. And one of the things that happened to them is when they were on a cruise, going on their honeymoon, they met another couple that was from Hanford. They were from Visalia, the other couple was from Hanford. And they were like, oh, wow, we're from the Valley too. We should meet up when we get back to the Central Valley. And they came up with the idea that every month of their anniversary, they would meet up and have dinner. So an anniversary dinner on the first month, second month, third month. And then on their 1-year anniversary, they were going to do it separately, but they would meet up once a month just to kind of check in and be kind of, relational friends. And so they had been meeting once a month, and now we're getting to the 3rd month. And while Timmy is at work, he gets a phone call, and his phone call is ring. Hello. Hey, Timmy, it's Jose. I'm, calling because we are having a Texas Hold'em on Friday night. I'm so excited about it, and I was hoping that you would join us. And Timmy is so excited because he has not talked to Jose since the wedding. He's thinking, oh my God, this sounds awesome. And so he looks at his calendar. He's like, oh my God, it's the 19th. I'm going to call Sally right now. He's like, Jose, look, I'm going to call my wife because, well, I know you got that ball and chain right now. So I hope that she says yes. He goes, oh, she's not like that, Jose, you're going to see. He's like, you were my best man. I know she's going to, say yes. So he calls Sally. He gets off the phone. He says he's going to do it. He rings over to Sally. Ring. Hey, Sally. Hi, Timmy. Baby, I love you. I was thinking about you today at my desk. And I got this call from Jose. Remember my best friend from the wedding? And she's, oh yeah, I love Jose. And he's like, well, wait till you hear. All the best men and some of my other friends are getting together on Friday night. They're going to have a Texas Hold'em, and I really want to go. And I told him you were going to be cool with it. I know you are. And she's like, well, Timmy, what is the date? And he goes, well, it's the 19th, baby. November the 19th. And she goes silent. And he says, Sally, you still there? And she goes, well, Timmy, do you know what the 19th is? And he's like, looking back at his calendar, trying to figure it out. And he's like, yeah, it's our 3-month anniversary, baby. He goes, we go out with our friends. We're going to our honeymoon couple and we're going to have dinner. And she goes, yeah. And he goes, well, is there any way that we could have our honeymoon reconnection dinner on Saturday night? And she goes, well, is our honeymoon on the 20th? And he says, well, no, baby, it's not. But, I figured that since every month we get together on the 19th with this couple, 1 month is not going to be bad. Can't we just move it to the 20th? And she is silent. And he says, are you still there, Sally? Yes, I'm still here, Timmy. And then she says, well, I think you just need to decide what's best. So he gets off the phone. He's like, look, he calls the buddy from the honeymoon couple. And he's like, look, man, I got invited to this Texas Hold'em. It's on Friday night. I want to go. You can go with me, but can we move our dinner to Saturday night? And the guy's like, yeah, man, I'll go to Texas Hold'em with you. Let me call my wife. I think she'll be fine with it. His wife is totally fine. She doesn't care. She's like, oh, I'll even call Sally, see if we can go to a movie, go shopping, whatever. And so now he comes home. He tells her that he's going to go to Texas Hold'em on Friday. And then on Saturday night, they'll have dinner and they'll go out as a couple or whatever. Well, she is not happy. And the reason that she's not happy is she is still in bonding. And he's moved to the second part of the model, which is the coming apart. And so he's now in differentiating, which means he's trying to gain a little bit more individuality. He's trying to get a little bit more privacy and he wants a connection with his friends. Does it mean it doesn't love Sally and want to be with Sally? No. But what it does mean is that he's looking for a little bit more of autonomy. And so he decides he's going. He tells her that, and she is upset, and she's going to quickly move over to coming apart as well. And the next stages of how they solve this is going to be dependent on how fastly they go into the end of coming apart, which could be detrimental to the relationship. And so what happens is next he goes, hold on 1 second. I want to make sure it doesn't mute me. Okay. The next part is he goes to differentiating. He goes to his Friday night Texas Hold'em tomorrow night. He takes his buddy with him that he met on the cruise, and his wife does go out with the friend, but she is not happy. And when he comes home from Texas Hold'em, he has a great time. He thinks it's all past. They go back to the house. She gets dropped off by the friend. She walks in the house. She doesn't say hello. She doesn't really communicate. She goes right to bed, and they are now in circumscribing. And circumscribing is where the communication between the two of them either decreases in quantity, which means how much they communicate, or it decreases in quality, meaning that when she communicates to him, it's not nice. So she is like, fine. She doesn't wake up and say good morning where she used to. Her communication with him is totally poor. And so what's happening is they are quickly moving from differentiating. She didn't even go to differentiating. She jumped from bonding and she went to circumscribing. And now he was in differentiating, which is wanting that autonomy. And now he's bumped himself to circumscribing, but he's not going to stay there long because he's like, well, forget that. I'm not putting up with this. I've been to every freaking honeymoon dinner since we got married. I can miss one. We're going tonight. I'm not going to be putting up with this. I'm going to put my foot down. We've been married for 3 months. This is not going to continue. And so now he goes to dinner. She barely talks. It's very clear to everybody at the table that she's upset. The other wife is trying to pull her out of it, but she's not willing to let it happen. And he feels stuck. He doesn't know what to do. And so what happens is when he gets home from dinner, the other guy feels totally uncomfortable because like, man, I just said yes because my wife was cool. And I'm sorry your wife wasn't, but good luck with that, Timmy. They get home, and instead of going to the bedroom, she goes to the guest bedroom. And so she moves from circumscribing to avoiding. He still feels stuck. He's like, I can't believe this is happening. I don't know what to do. And it is accelerating at a speed that he can't even, begin to deal with. And he's not talking about it. So he's not coming and confronting it, because if he was, they might be able to resolve it. But because he just feels stuck and he doesn't really know what to do, he begins to move into avoidance as well. And so what happens is in that moment of feeling stuck and feeling stagnated, they now begin to go like this. She's in the guest room. She's sleeping with the golden retriever. He's in his bedroom, their bedroom, sleeping in the bed alone. Big mistake. If you're ever in a relationship and you are starting to avoid like that, it is a fast track to moving towards the next beginning stages of ending the relationship. And so what I would tell Timmy if I was his friend is, you need to go, oh, you want to sleep in the guest bedroom tonight? All right, I'll sleep in there too. Or, hey, Sally, this is ridiculous. Flip the lights on. We are going to talk about this. You are not sleeping in here. We're going to sleep in our bed, even if we don't talk to each other, but we are not going to start avoiding and splitting our relationship in 2 different bedrooms. And how you resolve these next steps is going to lead to whether or not termination is going to happen. And so what happens in this moment is the avoidance can continue for days. So they could just continue to go like that. What I know about their relationship is when they did get in a fight, she wouldn't go to the second bedroom. She went to go sleep at her mom's. And my advice to them when I did talk to them was, you guys need to cut that out. And you need to tell Sally it's time to come home and stop talking to your mom. I'm in a relationship with you, not your mom. Now, let's say that the mom is not supportive of the relationship. What can happen is that can lead even further towards termination. So for example, in that true relationship of Sally and Timmy, when they did get in a fight, what I do know is that when Sally went to the mom's house, the mom told her, go home to your husband. Your dad and I got in fights, you work them out. You don't go and stay at your parents' house. You're not living with your parents anymore. You are married. It's time to start working on a relationship and grow up. The opposite of that could be a relationship where the in-laws are not supportive and they're feeding into the termination. Or let's say that Timmy calls Jose and Jose doesn't like Sal. And he's like, man, come on over here. We'll have another Texas Hold'em. Forget that girl. I never liked her anyway. She's too controlling, too demanding. You don't deserve to be treated like that. The more we have people that are going to treat it like that, the less likely we're going to get back together. The more we have people that are pushing us, they're going to socially support the relationship by advising us to work it out, the likely or we are going to begin to move back to the coming together and getting back hopefully to intensifying or integrating or bonding. So how we move through these stages is really up to us. But I warn you against too much of the avoidance, because I have had couples. I had one student years ago. She was a early elementary education student, and she went to the East Bay area, and she was a nanny because trying to get job experience, and she's taking classes in the East Bay. And she called me about this couple that they had been sleeping in different bedrooms of the house for 12 years. So for 12 years, the mom went to one bedroom, the dad went to the other bedroom, and they have lived like that for the entire time. Their story to the nanny is that the kids don't know, so don't bring it up. That they go to bed after the kids go to bed and they wake up before the kids go to bed. Now, I don't even know this relationship, and I'm sure you could say the same thing. There is no way these children don't know, especially if they're, let's just say that started when they were born. If they're 12 years old, there's no way they don't have an idea that there is a conflict or an avoidance that's going on in that relationship. If they don't see it physically with the bedrooms, I can guarantee you they see it emotionally with how they communicate with each other. And this was going on, why? Because they were staying together for the kids. They were waiting until the kid graduated and then they were going to divorce. That's not helping the kid, because what's the kid learning about conflict? You tell me. How's the kid learning how to solve conflict? to avoid it. Exactly. And that's going to lead further into a termination that is going to put in for their life, the way that they deal for conflict is they just avoid it. Whenever it happens, we just don't talk about it. We go to our separate bedrooms, or we just don't, say anything. Everything's fine, 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 and then never discuss it. So the goal is to not stay in avoiding and terminating for too long, because if you do, that can lead to the eventual evaporation of the relationship, even if we are physically living together. So my goal for you is to think about, where are these couples that you're interviewing? And so, for example, what stages do you feel like they are in? Are they in the same? Are they in different ones? What would you advise them? You don't have to tell them that, but it would be cool to see how you would look at that relationship. And you may think that it's crazy that I'm using the example of this Texas Hold'em to say that they had gotten that problematic in the relationship. But I have worked with couples that fight about that stupid of stuff. One couple almost divorcing over a green trash can. Was it really the green trash can they were fighting over? No. Was it really the Texas Hold'em that they were fighting over? No. There are other issues that are playing out, like that dialectical tension, that they're not addressing, that's really what's going on in the relationship. And so that's what we have to figure out. Where are the problems? What's, the squeaky wheel that's not getting the grease, and trying to figure out how to manage the relationship through those steps. Okay. Any questions about any of this material? I'm going to stop there. Okay. So you have skill assignment number 3 that's due by Sunday night. You've got your relational interview, which is a 4-page paper. Make sure that you have tested it and that it does fit to a 4-page Word document or Pages document. And then you have to turn that in by the Sunday night, the week after Thanksgiving. So December the 5th, that's due. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We will continue our lectures the following week. Next week, I will share this lecture and this PowerPoint slide, and we'll continue that lecture the following week. Next week, obviously, you don't have class because of Thanksgiving, but I will have an announcement that'll come out on Monday, because that would be your second part of your class in this hybrid class. If there's no questions, you're free to go. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, and it was good to see all of you guys.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, bye-bye. Have a good Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.